My sister-in-law is pregnant. On the night when the whole family celebrated, my brother's childhood sweetheart came to the door with a pregnancy test report and asked my brother to be responsible for her. My brother, who had always been aloof in the past, shamelessly put his arm around my sister-in-law. Dear wife, she's wronging me. In this life, I only have you. She's just trying to extort money. Looking at the culprit who caused my family to be ruined in my previous life, I smiled brightly. Our whole family has been waiting for you for a long time. 01 At the dinner table, my sister-in-law announced one thing. She was pregnant. My brother was stunned. My mom cried. My dad smiled. I breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, this day has come. In my previous life, on the day when my sister-in-law announced her pregnancy, the childhood sweetheart who grew up with my brother came with a pregnancy test report and asked my brother to be responsible. My brother had been honest all his life. Encountering this kind of thing for the first time, he was also at a loss and missed the best time to explain. Thinking that my brother had really done something wrong to her, after arguing with the childhood sweetheart for several rounds, my sister-in-law was so angry that she had a miscarriage on the spot. After the miscarriage, regardless of my parents' persuasion, she quickly divorced my brother. After my brother got divorced, his mental state had problems. Finally, under various pressures, he muddledly got a marriage certificate with the childhood sweetheart. Not long after marriage, the childhood sweetheart showed her true nature. Not only was she not pregnant, but she also set her sights on our house that was about to be demolished. After the demolition compensation was paid, she took all the money and ran away. My parents had a car accident when they went to chase her and died on the spot. My brother went completely crazy. And I finally got cancer and died in a snowy night that no one knew. 02 After calming down, our whole family decided to celebrate well. After all, from the day we knew we were reborn, the whole family has been living carefully according to the trajectory of our previous life. Finally, our efforts were not in vain. We have finally reached this day. My sister-in-law is the only one in our family who is not reborn and also the happiest person in our family. On the first day of being reborn, my brother said that he must be good to his sister-in-law and no one can bully her. Mom and Dad nodded hurriedly. Only I rolled my eyes. My brother went crazy early and my parents died early. They didn't know that in fact, my sister-in-law is the hidden big shot. I didn't tell them when I was reborn. It turns out that my sister-in-law's father is the richest man in our city. She just took a fancy to my brother's honesty and loyalty. Despite her parents' opposition, she hid her identity and married into my family. After they got divorced in their previous life, my sister-in-law didn't get married again. She inherited her father's company and finally became the first female billionaire in our province. In this life, when hearing that my sister-in-law is pregnant, Mom and Dad act immediately. They went to the vegetable market and bought all the things she likes to eat with a wave of their hands. My brother was afraid that I would be angry and gave me 200 yuan and asked me to go to a restaurant and buy something I like to eat. I didn't take his money. After getting married, my already not wealthy brother handed over all his salary. I don't know how long he has saved this 200 yuan as his private money. 03 When having a meal, I looked at the time on the wall. At the moment when it was time, the door was knocked. My brother and I looked at each other. Here it comes. Mom and Dad's hands were a little shaky. I glanced at them. Look at this lack of composure. How could they look like people who have been reborn after experiencing great storms? Fortunately, they quickly stabilized their emotions and continued to smilingly pick up dishes for my sister-in-law. The task of opening the door was given to me. As soon as I opened the door, Lilith pushed me aside and walked directly towards my brother. Nathan, you heartless man. This is all your fault. Lilith threw the pregnancy test report in her hand onto the table. I'm pregnant. It's yours. My sister-in-law subconsciously looked at my brother. My brother was even faster than her and hugged her tightly. Nervously, he said, "Dear wife, she's wronging me. In this life, I only have you. She's just trying to extort money." My sister-in-law was stunned by his behavior. After all, my brother had never hugged her in front of outsiders, let alone in front of my parents. After a while, my sister-in-law blushed. Well, you let me go first. No. Listen to me. Last time when I went to the class reunion, I stayed at my brother's house for one night. But that night I slept with my brother. Who knows that she took advantage of me being drunk and got into my bed and pretended that we had done something. My brother can testify. I'm not interested in other women. I'm only interested in you. My sister-in-law's face was almost down to her knees. Stop talking. Lilith was stunned. She looked at my brother incredibly. Nathan, I have been with you innocently. How can you be so heartless? My brother looked at my sister-in-law affectionately. My conscience has already been eaten by my wife. Do you have anything else? If not, don't disturb our celebration. Lilith finally regained her intelligence. I'm pregnant with your child. Given our family relationship, don't you have to be responsible for me? My brother finally looked at her, but he looked at her sideways. Do you have evidence to prove that the child in your belly is mine? Except for you, I don't have any other men. My brother's expression was like eating shit. Are you so unsaleable? When trying to extort money, you have to find a married man. Don't I know if I touched you or not? Lilith left, crying. Mom and Dad laughed loudly because the child in my sister-in-law's belly was saved. I gave my brother a thumbs up. 3 years ago, on the day when my brother was reborn, it was his and my sister-in-law's wedding night. He hugged his parents and cried, saying that on the day Lilith came to the door in his previous life, he was so angry that he didn't defend himself in time, which gave Lilith an opportunity. Later, when his sister-in-law had a miscarriage, she refused to see us no matter what and blocked all our contact information. As a result, they couldn't resolve the misunderstanding in time, which led to such consequences. The sentence my brother said most to me after being reborn is, in my previous life, I was crazy to know that your sister-in-law is more important than my life. If you hadn't stopped me, I would have burned down Lilith's house as soon as I was reborn. Fortunately, in this life, he took the initiative and stabilized his sister-in-law first. Not bad. He didn't give his sister-in-law a chance to confront Lilith. After being disrupted by my brother like this, his sister-in-law didn't raise her head again throughout the meal and hurried back to her room after eating. At night, my brother came to find me furtively. In my previous life, I was crazy for too long and forgot what Lilith did next. You should still remember? In his previous life, in order to make his sister-in-law give up, Lilith got the surveillance video from his brother's house and found someone to change the content of the surveillance video. His sister-in-law watched the surveillance video and was indeed misunderstood. In a fit of anger, she completely cut off contact with his brother. Presumably Lilith is on her way to his brother's house to change the surveillance video now. Unfortunately, her wishful thinking will fail. I went to pester his brother a few days ago and successfully got the surveillance video of that day and directly deleted the records in it. His brother wasn't actually drunk that day. In order not to let Lilith take advantage, he even wrapped himself up tightly. I asked him to hold his position. Otherwise, I'm afraid the follow-up won't go this way and I won't be able to take revenge. After coming back, I gave a backup of the surveillance video to his brother. His brother looked at me gratefully. I didn't spoil you for nothing. After I explain clearly to your sister-in-law, I will definitely find a good husband for you. I glanced at my brother. With your taste, figure out your sister-in-law first. He didn't even understand his own wife. Who gave him the confidence to find a partner for me? 04 I knew Lilith wouldn't give up so easily, but I didn't expect her attack to be so fierce. The next morning when I was still sleeping, I was woken up by crying in the living room. I pulled a long face and opened the door. Looking at it, Lilith actually brought helpers. I looked at my brother's room. The door was half open. He should have gone out. Well, I have to handle this today. Fortunately, I told my parents in advance last night and asked them not to be impulsive. We need to get evidence first so that Lilith has no way out. Exposing her like this is really too cheap for her. Lilith cried for a long time but didn't see my brother come out. Looking at my brother's room. Hasn't Nathan woken up yet? He wasn't like this before. Why doesn't he want to get up early since he got married? The older generation is right. Marrying an unvirtuous woman ruins 3 generations. I chuckled. My brother got up early before because he didn't have a wife to warm his bed. Now that he has a wife to warm his bed, of course he is reluctant to get up. Lilith was stunned at first, and then said pitifully, I have only slept in the same bed with Nathan since I was a child. Just that one time. How would I know what it feels like to have someone warm the bed? I nodded. Lying with my brother for less than a minute. You really shouldn't know. Lilith was angry. Who said it was just a minute? I was with him that night. Lilith's parents couldn't help but speak. Stella, I know my Lilith. She won't do anything to wrong your brother. You see, they have known each other for so many years. If it weren't for that time when they were both drunk, my Lilith would never end up with your brother no matter what. My dad rubbed his hands together. My mom gritted her teeth. I motioned for them to be calm. Suppressing the urge to throw out the surveillance video, I asked instead, since you are so popular, why do you want my brother who is second-hand? What do you want from him? When I said this, I stared at Lilith on purpose. Sure enough, I saw a flash of guilt in her eyes, but it disappeared quickly. What else can I want from him? The rice is already cooked. Can't I ask him to be responsible? I stared at her without speaking. Seeing that Lilith was so restless under my stare, my mom spoke. Our family is not unreasonable people. In this way, if you insist that you are pregnant with our grandson, Stella, you accompany her to have a comprehensive examination. If she is really pregnant, we will be responsible for her. Lilith's eyes lit up. Okay, Stella. Come with me. After we come back, you must tell the truth. TSK. Is she still treating me as the little idiot who chased after her and called her sister-in-law in my previous life? 05 If you ask me what regrets I have had in my 2 lifetimes, obeying Lilith, that scheming woman, and doing stupid things must be on the list. What is deeply impressive is that Lilith asked me to hit her on the way after my brother's tutoring class. I really did it. But I just touched her gently and she lay on the road and cried loudly. My brother thought I had really done something to her and hurriedly took her to the hospital. I don't know what the doctor said. Later, my brother didn't let me play with her anymore. But at that time, I was not smart. After being coaxed by her a few words, I continued to do stupid things foolishly. My brother scolded me several times. I didn't listen. It wasn't until my brother distanced himself from Lilith and married my sister-in-law that I slowly restrained myself. Later, my family was ruined. I followed Lilith for a while before I knew that it was her act of playing the martyr. She had always looked down on my brother, saying that my brother was stupid and dull. If it weren't for being good-looking and honest, he wouldn't even have the qualification to be her backup. 06 I agreed to go to the hospital for an examination with Lilith. During this period, she found a reason to send me away. I followed her intention and walked to the door but didn't go far. After the door opened, she was beaming with joy and handed the pregnancy test report to me. Here, look for yourself. I glanced at it. Except for the slightly higher HCG value, there was no data to prove that she was pregnant. I put the things away and walked towards the ultrasound room. Lilith pulled me. What are you doing there? Going for an ultrasound. Lilith glared at me. Haven't we finished the examination already? Come on, let's go home. Hurry back and tell them that I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant with your brother's son. She pulled me but didn't move me. Instead, I pulled her and moved towards the ultrasound room. I asked the obstetrician. It's better to have an examination. You are already at 12 weeks and it's time for the NT test. I've checked it all. Let's do it together by the way. Lilith suddenly shook off my hand. Are you crazy? Stella, are you possessed? You haven't given birth to a child. Don't listen to other people's nonsense. I looked at her steadily and suddenly looked behind her. Brother, how is sister-in-law's examination? How many weeks? Lilith hadn't reacted yet why my brother would appear here. Hearing my words again, she subconsciously screamed, "She's pregnant? Nathan, how can you let her get pregnant?" My brother put his arm around my sister-in-law and said helplessly, "Why can't I let my own wife get pregnant?" Lilith pointed at her own stomach. "But how can you let two women get pregnant at the same time?" It was the peak period of prenatal examinations. Lilith's words attracted countless people's gazes. They looked at my brother as if they were looking at a jerk. However, my brother was outstanding. He unhurriedly kissed my sister-in-law and said softly, "Dear wife, no matter what you hear later, don't be excited. I belong to you from the inside out. Don't believe the seductive bitches outside." My sister-in-law nodded obediently. "Do you need my help?" "This is a small matter. I can handle it." "Be good. You go and stand aside." Lilith's eyes turned green with envy. "Nathan." My brother rolled up his sleeves slowly, revealing the muscles he trained after being reborn to make my sister-in-law happy. "I know I'm still good-looking, but there's no reason to become a father accidentally just by walking on the street. My wife is still here. How immoral must one be to do something that breaks up other people's families?" I subconsciously glanced at my sister-in-law. Sure enough, she blushed. My brother said again, "As long as you can provide evidence to prove that the child is mine, I will let my wife kick me out." "Lilith, I?" For a long time, she couldn't say a complete sentence. My sister-in-law couldn't stand it anymore. She gave my brother a punch with a scolding tone. "She is a girl. You should at least save her some face. Well, when she is free, I will accompany her to have an amniocentesis." Before my brother could speak, Lilith went crazy and refused. "No. You just want to harm me. I won't give you a chance to harm my child in my belly." After saying that, she ran away. My brother and I looked at each other. Can't she bear this? But I'm not worried that Lilith won't come to find us because it's less than a month before the demolition document of my house comes down. Why does Lilith know these? She has an uncle who works in a relevant department and got internal news in advance. According to the current policy, demolishing my house can get 3 houses in the city center and additional compensation. Later, the house price of one of the houses skyrocketed and increased dozens of times. In her previous life, Lilith gave one of the houses to her uncle when my brother was crazy and drove my parents out and let her parents live in. Thinking of my experience in my previous life, I clenched my fist tightly. 07 I went out as usual and was blocked by Lilith in an alley. She seemed to have forgotten our previous unpleasantness and intimately put her arm around mine. I could only restrain my nausea and didn't push her away at the first time. "Stella, I know I shouldn't destroy your brother and sister-in-law's marriage, but I really like your brother. Can you help me one more time?" I glanced at the blood bag protruding from her pants pocket. "What help?" Lilith said, "Can you help me test if your brother has feelings for me? If he has no feelings for me, I will have an abortion and will never pester him again." I nodded. "Okay." Lilith was delighted and handed me the wooden stick she had prepared long ago. "Stella, you can't just hit me casually like last time. You have to hit realistically." I was a bit embarrassed. "What if I hurt you?" "No, hit me on the fleshy parts of my body. It won't be a big deal. Don't worry. Even if you accidentally lose control, I won't hold you responsible." What I was waiting for was her words. But I still pretended to be embarrassed. "I still can't do it. Or you should turn around. In this way, I can't see your face and can do it." Lilith now just needed someone to beat her to have an abortion. She had nothing to pick on. She quickly turned around. Okay. I'll turn around. Hurry up and do it." She is in such a hurry. Presumably she knows that my brother is nearby. I glanced around and sure enough, I saw my brother and my sister-in-law on the opposite street corner. My sister-in-law was craving grilled sausages and milk tea on the side of the road. I saw that she only took a sip of milk tea before my brother snatched it away and threw it into the trash can. TSK. What a wasteful guy. My sister-in-law ate the grilled sausage in a few bites and looked at my brother with a smile. Instead of being angry, my brother affectionately pinched her face. Well, I've encountered a scene of showing affection. Lilith urged me again. Why haven't you done it yet? Soon, soon. I looked back again. My brother had already led my sister-in-law across the road. I stretched my muscles and bones, picked up the stick and smashed it at her pocket. Perhaps stimulated, those memories that I deliberately ignored came flooding back. 08 In my previous life, after my brother and my sister-in-law got divorced, our whole family tried every means to find my sister-in-law to explain, but were all shut out. My brother was already in a crazy state. Lilith's parents held a loudspeaker and spread everywhere that my brother made Lilith pregnant and didn't take responsibility. As a result, his condition became even worse. They even stole the household registration book from my house while I was taking care of my sick parents in the hospital and forced my brother to get a marriage certificate. I handled my parents' funeral affairs alone. After handling it, I dragged my exhausted body and went home. Unexpectedly, I saw Lilith and several strong men at home. I immediately turned around and walked out. Unfortunately, it was too late. Those people caught me and poured something I didn't know into me. I lost consciousness on the spot. When I regained consciousness, I found myself locked in a damp and dark basement. Later, I was locked in an iron cage, hung in midair, and thrown onto a platform to be selected like an object. I clenched the stick and smashed it on Lilith's body again and again. Each time with full force. Stella, Stella, stop. You can't hit anymore, Stella. My brother's voice brought me back to my senses. I looked at Lilith half a beat later. Lilith was lying on the ground holding her head, looking painful, and one leg of her pants was red. I immediately calmed down, pretended to be panicked, threw the stick aside, and hugged Lilith and cried, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I just said I couldn't hit too hard. Look, I even broke the blood bag on you. As soon as Lilith heard this, she endured with great effort pain and refuted. What blood bag? Didn't you say you would beat me until I had a miscarriage? When passers-by saw Lilith's miserable state, they all gathered around and criticized me, saying that as a little girl, I hit people without mercy at all. I took out the bag from her pants pocket aggrievedly. None of you believe me. What I broke just now is this. I didn't hit her. If you don't believe me, then go to the hospital for an injury assessment. After living in a dark place for a period of time in my previous life, I knew too well where to hit to make it painful but without visible injuries. My brother and my sister-in-law agreed with me. Let's go to the hospital for an injury assessment together. Lilith originally wanted to show it to my brother. The purpose was to let my brother see that I beat her until she had a miscarriage. But no matter how much she calculated, she didn't expect this accident from me. She didn't want to go to the hospital and asked me to take her home to recuperate. When we were silent, enthusiastic passers-by couldn't stand it anymore. They called an ambulance and sent her to the hospital, in the name of not letting us go easily. 09 Lilith had a hard time in the hospital and asked the doctor to examine her several times. She firmly claimed that she was pregnant and was beaten by me until she had a miscarriage. She grabbed the doctor and cried and made a scene like an unreasonable shrew. The young doctor had a cold face. Are you questioning the professional level of our hospital? You are not pregnant and there is no external injury on your body. Even if you change to another hospital for examination, the result will be the same. Lilith glared at me angrily. She pressed me on the ground and beat me. Many people saw it. I took out my phone with tears in my eyes and turned on the recording. But, you insisted that I hit you. At the moment the recording was played, everyone was silent. Lilith's eyes looking at me were as if she wanted to eat me. When Lilith got out of bed to catch me, my brother took me out of the ward at the first time. The young doctor followed closely and came out. He stopped in front of me. Your complexion is not very good. You'd better have a comprehensive physical examination. I was stunned. Looking into his deep eyes, I suddenly remembered this person. In my previous life, when my brother was hospitalized, I often met him. The first sentence he said to me was exactly the same as the first sentence in this life. Unexpectedly, we met again in this life. I expressed my thanks and went home with my brother and sister-in-law. Several times my sister-in-law wanted to ask me, but my brother changed the topic. At night, she came to me quietly. Stella, this matter is all caused by your brother. Don't bear it alone. If you need help, you must ask me. Maybe I can help. I smiled. Sister-in-law, I really need your help. My sister-in-law's eyes lit up. Tell me. 10 Lilith's family was eyeing the demolition compensation and houses of my family. The next day, they came to the door again. My parents didn't plan to endure it anymore. They stopped them at the door. With a series of fierce actions, they vented all the grievance they had endured in the 5 years since being reborn. Lilith and her family of 3 were beaten and scolded and left in a mess. Mom and Dad are also amazing for being able to endure until today. Several times when passing by their room door in the middle of the night, I heard Mom and Dad gnashing their teeth and recalling the events of the previous life, saying that they are 100 years old combined, yet they still can't see through Lilith's little tricks. Otherwise, our family wouldn't have ended up in that situation. When my dad was sleepwalking, he even went to the kitchen to get a knife. Fortunately, the noise he made when opening the door woke up my mom, thus avoiding a tragedy. When we take revenge, we must not get ourselves involved. I tried various ways to give psychological counseling to my dad, telling him that revenge should not be rushed, and even more so, we cannot simply give them a quick end. To kill someone, one must pierce their heart. Our family has a small factory. At present, it is developing quite well. In these days, besides waiting for an opportunity, my brother would take my sister-in-law to the factory when he had nothing to do. In the previous life, the factory was on the verge of improvement in my brother's hands. But because of Lilith's disturbance, it finally went bankrupt. So after being reborn, Mom and Dad asked my brother to let go and reform. Unexpectedly, he gathered his strength. In just 2 years, the factory was revived and even developed better than in the previous life. Now our family only seems poor on the surface. After venting, Mom and Dad felt completely comfortable. The 2 old people held hands and went to the vegetable market. When my brother and sister-in-law came back and saw the sumptuous dinner on the table, they asked in confusion, "Do we have guests today?" Of course not. Mom and Dad are happy and made all the dishes that the 3 of us like. Hurry up and wash your hands and eat. Unfortunately, someone won't let us eat in peace. Look, just as we sat down at the table, Lilith came again. This time she didn't bring her parents but a group of reporters and internet celebrities. A group of people forced their way into our house. Everyone held a camera or mobile phone and took pictures of us. My brother reacted quickly and protected my sister-in-law and went back to the room. After my sister-in-law locked the door, he stood in front of me and smashed Lilith's mobile phone. Is this endless? Alright, then let's settle our grievances once and for all right now. I have never seen my brother look so gloomy. Subconsciously, I pulled Mom and Dad and retreated to the side. Lilith said to my brother with a heartbroken expression, "Why can't you just look at me properly? Where am I not as good as that person from the countryside?" Yes. My sister-in-law's household registration is still in the countryside and hasn't been transferred here. Precisely because of this, no one would think that she actually has a hidden identity. My brother sneered, "Have you looked in the mirror? Can you compare with my wife? How is that possible? She didn't even go to high school or college here. I have an urban household registration. She married you just because she was after your urban household registration." I was stunned. I know Lilith has no bottom line, but where does her sense of superiority come from? Just as I was about to speak, my brother taunted, "Just because of the 30 square meter house you live in? Lilith, if it weren't for your dad working in my family's factory, how could you get a collective household registration? Where does your sense of superiority come from?" Lilith's face turned blue. Knowing that she couldn't win against my brother in this aspect, she immediately aimed at the cameras of the internet celebrities. The small boss of this factory bullies others, shields the culprit, and even wants to tamper with my medical records to settle the matter. I tell you, no way. If you don't compensate me today, I'll see you in court. My brother remained unmoved. Go ahead. If you have evidence, just go. If you can't sue me, I'll make you pay for it. Lilith's face was livid and she didn't dare to say another word. She had never seen my brother like this before and was somewhat fearful. After all, her dad still works in my family's factory. Now my brother is in charge of the factory. If Lilith offends my brother, even her dad will be laid off. So she locked her target on me again. Stella. I shuddered and turned on the recording that Lilith made when she asked me to hit her. When the internet celebrities saw that there was a reversal, their eyes lit up. I tried hard to cooperate and squeezed out a few tears. Why are you framing me? Clearly you asked me to hit you. Now you go back on your word. If there were no this recording, would I be taken to jail? Lilith, I regarded you as a friend, but you actually treat me like this. Lilith was stunned. I continued my performance. I heard that your brother is talking about getting married. Could it be that you want to extort money from me to help your brother get money for the bride price? 11 In my previous life, after I escaped from the human trafficker's den and came back here, I happened to run into his brother's wedding. That pomp and circumstance was so grand that one would think it was a wealthy family getting married if they didn't know. Only then did I know the ultimate goal of Lilith's family. It was our family's house and money. Lilith probably didn't expect that I would guess to this extent. Finally, she panicked. What are you talking nonsense? What does my brother's marriage have to do with me? My family is not short of money. My brother is still a top student. I smiled. A top student who was forced to drop out of school in junior high school? If Lilith's brother were a bit more diligent, Lilith's family wouldn't have fallen to this point of decline. But her brother is lazy and finds a job in an internet cafe. He asks the old couple for money every day. Seeing that the development of things was getting more and more out of control, Lilith took the internet celebrities away. She didn't know that those reporters who came with her didn't leave. Moreover, they interviewed me. The reporter was contacted by my sister-in-law. They are reporters from a relatively famous local TV station. If only she had observed the people around her carefully, she wouldn't have given us an opportunity. But maybe she has found out and thinks that they are here to help her? Early the next morning, the door of my house was knocked by Lilith so loudly that it was deafening. I sat by the bed in my pajamas all night before she came. So slowed out I slowly went to open the door and only opened it a crack. What's the matter? Lilith had red eyes and a ferocious face. Stella, I will kill you. Who let you release those videos and recordings? Who let you do it? I leaned against the door and rubbed my ears. You are so noisy. Lilith pushed the door like a crazy woman. Open the door for me. Open it quickly. The door was locked with an anti-theft chain by me. Lilith tried several times but couldn't open it. She wanted to reach in through the crack to open the anti-theft chain. I leaned weakly against the door. Lilith let out a miserable scream. I looked at her hand that had changed color due to being pinched expressionlessly, thinking of the several fingers I lost in my previous life. Compared to me, what is her little pain? My brother's door opened. I relaxed only when I saw my sister-in-law come out. Lilith cried and left, muttering curses. I yawned. I'll go catch up on some sleep. 12 Lilith planned to expose our family on the internet through internet celebrities and attempt to frame us. And I provided evidence of Lilith slandering my family through reputable TV reporters. In just one night, the wind direction on the internet has changed greatly. Our family has suddenly become the object of sympathy of the whole network. Because of Lilith's repeated disturbances, the relationship between my brother and sister-in-law has not been affected. Instead, their relationship is getting better and better. She also wholeheartedly wanted to help solve the family's difficulties. After I spoke, she directly found TV reporters and achieved it in one step. Later, my brother asked suspiciously how I got in touch with the local TV station. I gave him a mysterious smile. I have lived 2 lifetimes. Can't I handle such a little thing? My brother didn't ask me again. On the day when the demolition document came down, the whole street was filled with joy. Unexpectedly, that night, the $200,000 in cash taken by my mom suddenly disappeared. This money was originally intended by my mom to give some benefits to the workers. We quickly called the police, and this case was solved very smoothly. Finally, through the dashboard camera of a car near my house, 2 thieves who stole at night were caught, Lilith and her brother. With the stolen goods and the criminals caught, the 2 quickly confessed to the 200,000. But what was lost in my family was not just this 200,000. There was also 300,000 previously paid to my dad by a partner. So the police searched Lilith's house overnight. And they really found the remaining 300,000. It is said that when the police arrived at Lilith's house, Lilith's parents were counting the 300,000. They were caught red-handed again. When Lilith's parents were handcuffed, they still greedily grabbed a handful of money and said that the money was theirs. In the end, Lilith's family was arrested for burglary. Lilith was sentenced to 8 years, and her family members were all sentenced to 3 years. Later, I went to the prison to see Lilith. She had gained a lot of weight and glared at me with hatred. "Did you frame me, right? Stella, did you do something?" I avoided her topic. "It seems that life inside is not bad. I hope you can be a bit more miserable when I come to see you next time." Lilith wished she could strangle me. "Stella, I will never let you go even if I become a ghost." "Then wait until you become a ghost and talk about it." 13 On the day my sister-in-law was about to give birth, our whole family was waiting outside the operating room. My brother was so nervous that his legs were shaking. To prevent us from noticing, he walked back and forth, making us all dizzy. The delivery was very smooth. My sister-in-law gave birth to a daughter. When the nurse was about to hand the daughter to my brother, he clung to the door of the operating room, looking forward with eager eyes. Mom and Dad were crying and laughing. The 2 old people took the child to do various examinations and asked me to stay and watch my brother. After finally waiting for my sister-in-law, my brother, that big man who was 1.85 meters tall, hugged my sister-in-law and cried nonstop. The nurse couldn't pull him away. I shouted, "You are about to press on sister-in-law's wound." Hearing this, he immediately bounced away. My sister-in-law was amused by him. When walking to the door of the ward, I heard my brother say softly to my sister-in-law, "We won't have any more children in the future. Never again." My sister-in-law said, "Your factory is getting bigger and bigger now. It's not like you can't afford to raise a child." My brother shook his head vigorously. "I spend all my money on you. I earn money just to support you. Otherwise, what do I earn it for?" I silently withdrew my hand that was about to open the door and left. My brother, that fool, still doesn't know that my sister-in-law is not short of money. If my sister-in-law doesn't take the initiative to mention this, I will keep this secret in my heart forever. My parents have nothing to say about her. There is no so-called relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. They treat my sister-in-law the same as they treat me and have never mistreated her. With revenge taken and life returning to calm, it seems that I have no regrets. A person blocked my way ahead. When I looked up, it was that young doctor again. He frowned and stared at me for a while and asked, "Have you had the examination?" I nodded randomly. He reached out. "Let me see the report." I jokingly said with a smile, "Aren't you an obstetrician?" He was very stubborn and didn't fall for my trick. "Let me see the report." I didn't have an examination at all. Where can I conjure up a report for him? So I planned to walk around. Unexpectedly, his firm voice came from behind. "Cancer in the early stage has a chance of cure and the prognosis is good. I suggest you be hospitalized for treatment now." I frowned unhappily and was about to speak when I heard my brother's voice calling me from behind. "Stella, oh no." 15 When Mom, Dad, my brother and sister-in-law learned that I was sick, they were very calm and divided the work in an orderly manner, arranging everything for me clearly. I was forcibly taken to have examinations by my dad and brother. The more examinations I had, the more guilty I felt. "Brother, sister-in-law has just given birth. You go and accompany her." My brother had a stern face. "She asked me to come. If I hadn't stopped her, she would have come to accompany you in person." I looked at my dad. "Dad, there is still soup stewing at home. Why don't you go back and take a look? My dad's face was even longer than my brother's. The soup was stewing last night. Your sister-in-law should have had it by now. I pulled a long face. The two of you have such expressions. It makes me seem like I really have cancer. My brother and dad looked at me coldly. The results came out. Early stage kidney cancer. Fortunately, the cancer cells have not spread yet. While everyone breathed a sigh of relief, they arranged for me to be hospitalized for treatment without stopping. The young Dr. Jason somehow became my attending doctor. Day by day, he was dedicated, causing my parents to look at him as if he were their son-in-law. I couldn't stand it anymore and cut off contact with him after being discharged. Half a year later, when I was lying on the bed, hesitating whether I should turn over, my dad let a person in with a smile. When I saw him, I was numb. My dad didn't care about my feelings at all. He sent the person to my room and thoughtfully told me, "Stella, Jason came to see you specially. You get up and entertain him." Saying that, he also closed the door. After hesitating for a long time, my final stubbornness made me sit up and tidy my hair. After being hospitalized for so long, what ugly appearance of mine hasn't he seen? Jason smiled and rubbed my just tidied hair. "How are you feeling?" "Not bad. It's just that I've gained a lot of weight after lying down for a long time." He smiled again. "Shall I take you to a place?" "No. After dealing with Lilith's family, everywhere except the bed is far away." Jason said, "Come on, you will like it." I looked at him steadily. "Jason, I've always been curious. How did you know I had cancer?" "Oh, maybe it was in the previous life." I was shocked all over and looked at him with much more vigilance. But he smiled gently. "It might also be in a dream. However, it's just not a very good dream." That day I still went out with Jason. He took me to the back hillside of the hospital. There was a big tree on the hillside, and there was a familiar wishing rope hanging on the big tree. I looked at the wishing rope and was silent. During that time, my brother was crazy and refused to cooperate with the treatment well in the hospital. Mom and Dad were greatly hit after sister-in-law left. Later, because of the house matter, they couldn't spare energy to take care of my brother. So the responsibility of taking care of my brother fell entirely on me. Every time my brother had a treatment, I was exhausted. When I was extremely uncomfortable, I would run here and seek help in a desperate situation. I regarded this big tree as a life-saving straw and made a wish to it. And the wishing rope in front of me is exactly the same as the wishing rope I hung in my previous life. I suddenly understood. "Jason, so you started noticing me in the previous life?" "I was standing by the office window at that time and watched you make wishes devoutly every day. I thought this must be a kind and strong girl. Later, when I had contact with you, I couldn't help but pay attention to you. But that day, after you sent your brother back to the hospital, I never saw you again." I learned about what happened to my brother later from Jason. He said that my brother was treated in the hospital for a year and suddenly disappeared one day. He told me that the day my brother disappeared was the day when I was beaten to the point of being on the verge of death by human traffickers and thrown into the wilderness. Perhaps it was the will to take revenge that supported me. In the end, I didn't die. I begged all the way back here. Unfortunately, my body couldn't hold on until the day I took revenge. Fortunately, God gave us a chance to start over so that our family can still live happily together. Jason confessed to me, but I didn't accept. The things in the previous life had a great impact on me, and my personality was inevitably extreme. A person with my personality is like a time bomb that may explode at any time. How can I bear to implicate Jason, who has a better future? But Jason didn't give up and appeared at my house more frequently. I don't know what my parents were thinking. They scolded me day by day and said that I didn't know how to cherish. Oh, I really want to run away from home. So I really ran away from home. For 2 days, Mom, Dad, my brother and sister-in-law didn't look for me. When Jason found me in the hotel, I was just about to pack up and go home. No matter how good other places are, they are still not as good as my own humble home. Jason confessed to me again on the way back. He said, "I dreamed of you last night." I responded and was thinking about how to ask my mom to make me a delicious meal. Stella, is it because of those unbearable experiences that you won't accept me? I froze all over. What? He sighed softly and slowly hugged me. A person who is usually so shrewd. Why are you so confused about this kind of thing? Stella, you are very good. It's not you who are wrong. It's them. Don't punish yourself with their mistakes. I was hugged by him without daring to move. After a while, I said softly, once it's dirty, it's dirty. I can't accept you anymore. Then are you willing to come out? Let me accompany you to come out? I shook my head. You have a better future. Don't sacrifice your future for me. It's not worth it. But Stella, I spent 50 years being a vegetarian and chanting Buddhist scriptures in my previous life before I got a chance to start over. Are you really not going to give it a try with me? What did you say? My hands and feet stiffened. Does he mean we were reborn because of him? But we didn't have much interaction in our previous life. Why did he do this? Before I could say the words of refusal, Jason said, you didn't have a deep impression of me in your previous life, but I had a very deep impression of you. Stella, give me a chance. Just give me 1 year. If you still can't accept me in this year, then I will. He deliberately paused and then said, I've been chasing you for a lifetime. At worst, I'll spend the next lifetime on it again. Epilogue. Jason's chapter. My mom called again to urge me to get married. 10 consecutive hours of surgery made me physically and mentally exhausted. I rubbed the space between my eyebrows and didn't want to deal with her distractedly. I casually found an excuse to prevaricate. As soon as I looked up, I saw that girl standing on the back hillside outside the window again. She would appear here almost at this time every day, looking at that big tree and not knowing what she was thinking. But today is different. She also has a red rope in her hand. I saw her stand for a while and then stand on tiptoe and tie the red rope to a branch. Then she put her hands together. I have been in the hospital for 6 years. It's the first time I've seen someone pin their hopes in such a way. In the following days, she came again. She brought a red rope every day. That branch had more and more red ropes, which was conspicuous compared to other bare branches. That day, when I was making rounds, I saw her. She stood by the hospital bed, looking at the man on the bed who refused to cooperate with the treatment. Her expression was desperate. But she didn't get angry or scold. Instead, she squatted down and picked up one by one the things that the man had thrown on the ground. Brother, look, you threw things and I need to pick them up for you. If I'm not here, what will you do? I was stunned, recalling the first time I met her head on. Her complexion was very bad and she was extremely thin. It seemed more like it was caused by a problem with her body. Under her surprised gaze, I reminded her to have a physical examination. She was silent for a while and said, thank you, and then left. Presumably she has already found out what's wrong with her now. The people around urged me to leave. I looked back at her again. She had already packed up the things and continued to gently persuade her brother to cooperate with the treatment. My colleague said to me, this pair of siblings are also poor people. Their house is going to be demolished, which attracts people with bad intentions. The sister-in-law ran away. 2 days ago, their parents were also tormented and hospitalized. They simply can't take care of her brother who has mental problems. I couldn't help but sigh. But the hospital is a place that witnesses all kinds of life. Later, I heard that her brother was discharged from the hospital and also learned her name. Stella. Once on my way off work, I saw a similar red rope at a street vendor's stall. I bought it on an impulse. When I came to my senses, I found that my attention to Stella had exceeded that to ordinary patients' family members. For a moment, I was speechless. But at my age, there is no need to avoid my feelings. In the following time, every day before going to work, I would go to that tree and tie a red rope. I saw Stella again. Her condition was even worse than when I saw her last time. When I was about to greet her, I found that she was wearing a white flower on her head. I was suddenly stunned. After quietly inquiring, I learned that her parents had both passed away. Since then, Her brother's condition has become even worse. Doctors and nurses surrounded him and gave him a sedative. Stella just stood by the bed and looked at her brother. Her eyes were like a stagnant pool. I had never seen such a desperate and calm look in her eyes. It caused great panic in my heart, so that as soon as I finished my work, I would subconsciously look for her. That day, when I went to the ward to see her, I saw that her brother was going crazy again. A group of people were in a mess. And after looking around, I didn't see Stella. I panicked. After asking many people, I learned that she had gone to the rooftop. When I found her on the rooftop, she was standing at the edge and still walking forward. Without thinking, I rushed over and hugged her. At the moment I touched her, I found that under her clothes, she was even thinner than I had imagined. She pushed me away and said calmly, "I'm not going to jump off the building. I just want to find a place to get some fresh air." I was relieved, but I didn't leave. Instead, I stood behind her. Just right. I also want to get some fresh air. Stella glanced at me, but she didn't say anything. In the following days, we met on the rooftop. She seemed to get used to my existence. I thought that after she got familiar with me, I could express my feelings to her. If not, we could start as friends. But the accident came suddenly. After going down from the rooftop that day, I never saw Stella again. Her brother was left in the hospital. Until the prepaid medical expenses were used up, she didn't appear. Her phone couldn't be reached and she couldn't be contacted. I paid for the final treatment expenses of her brother. I thought that when she came back, she could pay me back for the rest of her life. Unfortunately, a year passed and she still didn't come back. On that day, my colleague came to me in a panic and said that Stella's brother was missing. We called the police, and I also joined the search. I will always remember that winter when heavy snow was falling. I searched for Stella's house along the way. When passing by an alley, I heard a faint voice. Subconsciously, I walked into the alley. Finally, in the depths of the alley where waste paper was piled up, I saw people. At that moment, my soul was trembling. There were two people sitting in the corner, one of them was Nathan. As for the other one, if I didn't look carefully, I probably wouldn't recognize her. She was wearing a hospital gown. The loose hospital gown covered her whole body. Even so, the exposed parts of her body were still in a terrible state. Even though I am very familiar with the human body, at this moment, I can't tell what kind of torture she has endured to become like this. She quietly leaned in Nathan's arms, her eyes closed tightly, and there was no trace of blood on her face. If I'm not mistaken, she is already dead. Nathan held her in his arms, wearing only a thin shirt. He also closed his eyes. His lips were white from the cold, but he stubbornly held Stella in his arms tightly. Just now he could still make a sound, but now, he also lost his breath. A huge grief came over me. I squatted in front of them and covered my face, shedding silent tears. After handling the funerals of their siblings, I went to the temple to pray. 2 days a week, without fail. After a year, the presiding master gave me a bracelet and asked me to be a vegetarian and chant Buddhist scriptures for 5 years, so that they could be reincarnated. I am a materialist, but I abandoned my belief and firmly believed the words of the presiding master. I asked him, if I am a vegetarian and chant Buddhist scriptures for 50 years, can I give her whole family a chance? I admit that I am greedy. I am afraid that I won't be able to find her in the next life, so I want a chance to start over. The presiding master said, sincerity leads to spirituality. How do you know if you don't try? So, in the next 50 years, I was a vegetarian and chanted Buddhist scriptures. I didn't get married and dedicated my whole life to my career. 50 years later, I was lying on the hospital bed, still holding the bracelet given by the master. As soon as I opened my eyes, I was back to more than 50 years ago, before everything happened. God knows how eager I am to see that lively her, but I held back. Before long, I saw her in the hospital. It's so good. She looks very happy. Presumably those bad things in the previous life didn't happen. On the day her sister-in-law gave birth, she was waiting outside the operating room. From a distance, I looked at her for a long, long time. After all, I couldn't control my worry about her, so I went to talk to her. From the shocked look in her eyes, I could see that she still remembered me. But she didn't plan to talk to me. So when I saw her brother come out, I shouted behind her, "Cancer in the early stage has a chance of cure and the prognosis is good. I suggest you be hospitalized for treatment now." Yes, in my previous life, I checked her case. It was kidney cancer. She had a chance of cure, but it was delayed by various things. I won the bet. She was forcibly taken to treatment by her parents and brother. I became her attending doctor, and then took the opportunity to get close to her parents and brother. After some time, her parents were more and more satisfied with me. But she was very resistant to me. This was something I didn't expect. I checked her affairs in my previous life and only then did I know that she had been trafficked. On the day Nathan disappeared, she escaped from the den of human traffickers. To be precise, she crawled out of a pile of dead people. I think the reason for her refusal is probably related to her experience during that period. So I patiently approached her. But I was still too impatient and scared her. She said that once she was dirty and couldn't accept me. How could she think like this? In my heart, she is nobler and purer than anyone else. It's those people who are wrong, never her. She didn't accept my confession, but accepted my proposal and let me chase her for a year. I secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, I was prepared in advance and took a psychology course. So a year later, she became my girlfriend. 2 years later, we got married. 3 years later, we had a very lovely daughter. During this period, a small thing happened. Stella's sister-in-law's identity couldn't be hidden anymore. On the day her sister-in-law gave birth to her second child, a middle-aged couple with noble temperament came. The noble lady hugged her sister-in-law and cried sadly. While scolding her sister-in-law, she shed tears in distress. Later we learned that it turned out that in order to marry Nathan, her sister-in-law had a falling out with her family and had no contact for several years. Now that the parents couldn't bear it and came to find her, only then did everyone know that her sister-in-law was actually the daughter of the richest man in the city. Stella said, "It's actually very irrational for a girl to be desperate for love." In the previous life, my sister-in-law didn't win the bet. Fortunately, in this life, my sister-in-law made up for the regret. I rested my chin on her shoulder. "I rather hope you are less rational. Then I wouldn't have to wait so long." She glared at me. "You're taking advantage and still acting coy." I held her and chuckled. "Stella, whether in the previous life or this life, if you choose me, I will never let you lose."